heard quite a lot since we've been here today about what AI is, how transformational it is, and the fact that it's here to disrupt various industries. And that if traditional firms do not jump on this bandwagon, as it were, they stand the risk of being left behind or going extinct altogether. But some of the examples that have been given may seem a bit far out of our reach. And so the natural question many of us will be asking, especially for those who are still skeptical or cautiously optimistic about AI, how exactly can we begin to move our firms in the right direction? So we put together a number of use cases that others are adopting around the world and also here in Nigeria. And we'll just quickly run through them over the next 30 minutes or so across various industries. We'll be looking at how AI impacts individuals within the firm. We'll look at AI in retail, in healthcare, manufacturing, rideshare, finance, agriculture, energy, and IT security. I know this is quite a lot of ground to cover in 30 minutes, but the aim here is to leave you with more questions than answers, to get you thinking. How exactly can we adopt these concepts for our own use? Now, we just want to reiterate the advantages of adopting AI in our respective businesses. It helps us to increase efficiency and productivity. It helps with cost reduction through automation, some of those things we tend to do manually that take longer time, prone to errors, and so on, and then we need to spend so much more correcting. It also enhances the stakeholder experience, because there's often a lot of emphasis on the customer. The customer is a critical stakeholder in any business. But then you also have employees, you have shareholders, you have the regulators, and you have other parties that interact with that institution who we refer to as stakeholders. That's why we crossed out the customer there. And all of them, we can use AI to enhance our interactions with these individuals to drive value. So, as with anything in society, it almost always starts with the individual, then it grows to a larger group of individuals, in this case the team, and then there is now a trickle effect to the industry at large. So imagine a financial institution. You first of all need to empower the respective individuals working within that environment to use AI to enhance their work on a daily basis. Then they move out to the teams, and then it begins to percolate throughout the entire industry. So we're going to be specifically focusing on the individual and the industries, and then in the later presentation, we would highlight how teams tend to cohese around these things. Now, AI for the individual. Our flagship solution in this regard is Microsoft Copilot. And one of the reasons why we are putting that out there is because it's kind of familiar to us. How many of us in this room have used ChatGPT or DeepSeek or any of those other tools? So we're quite familiar with, should I call it the modus operandi of how you engage with that tool. Behind it are some of the latest in AI models that have the ability to reason over data, have the ability to understand the questions we're asking of them, and then respond in kind. That same model is what was built into Copilot. But the difference here is that it integrates with all of the tools that we're familiar with. I remember that one of the reasons why most enterprises bet on M365 is because of the ease of use. They seem to have figured out the things that we do on a daily basis that we want addressed. From Excel to PowerPoint to Outlook to Teams to OneNote to Publisher to all the other tools within that entire stable. Now, all of them are empowered because AI has been infused through Copilot. But why did Microsoft specifically choose the name Copilot? Just think of it. Have there been times when you missed a critical meeting because you were overloaded? Have there been times when you were unable to turn in certain assignments or meet up with certain deadlines or fulfill certain requirements on the job because somehow you were swamped at that particular point in time? For many of us who are in management or who are executives, you have to manage multiple individuals, you need to deal with customers, you need to deal with your board, you need to deal with auditors. There are so many touch points in your daily lives, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. Things fall through the cracks. Even for those individuals who are very organized and lay everything out, you have a number of task lists in Outlook, you have things on your calendar, you have reminders, and you have these things on your tablet, on your phone, and on your PC. But sometimes things still slip because you only have 24 hours in a day. Wouldn't it be so much easier if you had a buddy, somebody who is there with you daily, who knows what meetings you need to prepare for, which documents are relevant to preparing for that meeting, who can work with you to prepare a report that you have to present to management. It knows where all the relevant information is coming from, and it can help you distill some of those things so that you can get the insights that are relevant to the management for decision making. Those are just some of the examples of the ways in which Copilot can help us achieve so much in our work. So it makes our workload much more manageable, it boosts our creativity, it helps us focus on that work which is more important. Because even though you may rise through the ranks, you find out that there are some things that are very, very routine, that do not add to your creative edge, do not help you create new value, but are necessary to keep the business running. So is it possible to automate those things out and have the Copilot handle them for you? That's what we mean by helping you focus on the more important work and ultimately making your work more enjoyable. So remember, I made a confession at the beginning. This is going to be a whirlwind talk because we just want us to see the possibilities, and that will get us asking questions that hopefully in session book with you we'll get to answer. How about AI in retail? For those of us in sales, how many of us have a selling function here? Directly or indirectly? Okay, quite a few. Now, you'd agree with me that selling is actually getting more complicated. Because in the past, perhaps we used to have a narrow range of products and we expected the customers to conform. But now, more and more, customers want personalized experiences, and we're under obligation to provide this to them. So the range of products, the number of customers, the variety of needs and interests, how do you manage all these things and stay on top of your game and ensure that your numbers don't tank? So we have AI being used in retail to help us deal with all of these things, from whether it's from getting into new markets or sustaining the ones that we already have and keeping them happy so that we don't experience attrition. These are just some numbers that show the possible increases when Copilot is applied to the selling process and how it can greatly increase our output. So we're calling on us to infuse Copilot into the selling process so that our sellers can cut out the drudgery, better connect with the data, and crush the sale and continuously improve. Ultimately, that benefits the business. This is what the experience for Microsoft 365 Copilot for Sales looks like. And remember, Copilot is embedded in all the applications that we work with. One of the cool things about Copilot is that it doesn't necessarily lock you into the sales tools that Microsoft provides, but it can integrate with Salesforce or any of those other similar solutions, and then ultimately connect to the data within your ERPs, your line of business applications, or any other tools within your ecosystem that needs to draw insights from, so that you have a holistic view of the customer and can engage with them accordingly. So this is what a day in the life of a typical salesperson would look like, the various touch points where Copilot can come in and assist. Okay, so another aspect of retail is having targeted marketing to specific individuals. We understand that that involves a lot of research. Oftentimes, these are people you've not had dealings with. But then how do you craft your product services to in their interests and get them to come to the table and have business dealings with you? Copilot can also assist with that because it has a lot to do with data and then putting it into bucket to help you go to these customers with the right solutions that actually meets their needs so that you don't turn them away. AI beginning to feature more and more in healthcare. And we see this with it being used to diagnose ailments in people, whether it's reading x-rays, looking at the results of tests. Sometimes certain ailments require a battery of tests to be performed, and then the correlation between those symptoms is ultimately what helps the doctors to determine whether a person has a particular ailment or not. Sometimes it's a bit of a guesswork unless they see with certainty that the ailments that they're diagnosing actually exist the way it should. So, some of the things that were mentioned earlier, machine learning, where we gather the data, we run algorithms over it, and we use it to see the patterns. That happened a lot during COVID. Remember the RNA vaccines that were released into the market in the shortest possible time, which was a far cry from the way vaccines used to be developed in the past. That was one of the applications of AI and machine learning when it came to healthcare. So being able to synthesize new drugs using the various tools that are available to us is one of the things that is being used to help improve health delivery across the world. So early disease detection, personalized treatment plans, because we find out that these days, some drugs that may work for certain individuals may not work for other individuals. And AI can help us to detect those things, especially when somebody has a particular genetic trait that may make it difficult for a particular drug to work for them. AI can help us detect all of these things and make the process of giving care much easier and faster. So these are just some of the benefits that we will not spend too much time highlighting. They're the usual suspects. We get to do things faster, we streamline, we reduce cost, improve operational efficiency, we improve the experience, and obviously make life much easier for the patient in question. These are just some other examples of applications of AI in the health sector. When it comes to AI in manufacturing, we know the usual problems that we tend to encounter. Sometimes there is waste, there are defects in some of the products, and then there can be a mismatch between what is produced and the actual demand that is out there in the market. And even though there is a usual trend that we follow from year to year, sometimes, even though the general pattern may be maintained, the actual numbers may go up or down based on certain other environmental events that are beyond our control. Many firms have been able to use AI to detect these cyclical patterns over multiple years and then plan accordingly to either increase production capacity or cut back on production. But then if they begin to see any trends out there in the market, they can quickly adjust because they are examining those traits in real time. So these are just some of the areas in which AI is applied in manufacturing, from predictive maintenance to quality control, supply chain optimization, autonomous manufacturing systems, as well as energy management. And then these are the benefits that tend to result from it. Data-driven decision-making, increased efficiency and productivity, and ultimately at the end of the day, we'd like to enhance our bottom line. For case studies and real-world examples, Intertape Polymer Group and Bridgestone heavily use AI to enhance their operations. Okay. For rideshare, we believe that many of us actually use Bolt, Uber, GoCarda, well, not here, but any of these shared transportation services are things that we call on from time to time. And an emerging trend currently in Nigeria are people who are getting to haulage to help people move goods and services from one point to another. So how can these firms, whether we manage our own fleets or we outsource to other companies, how can they greatly enhance the services that they provide? AI can be used to help make route planning more efficient, once again using the various tools, machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, and that helps with pricing, because sometimes, especially for the long haulage, Prices tend to be fixed and static, and there are times when we may feel that this is unfair. But can they use dynamic pricing based on the situations of the road? Because we know that seasonally, people tend to travel more in certain directions than at other times. So can that be used to adjust prices up or down, which in turn tends to favor the customer and draw patronage? These are some of the things that AI can help us do. It can also enhance driver and rider safety, route optimization and traffic prediction, as well as personalized ride experiences in the case of Uber, Bolt, and some of the others that are coming up. In finance, which tends to be one of the things that cuts across everybody here. So whether we're protecting our own finances, we're protecting finances of others, for instance, we're an asset management firm, we're a bank, or we're a fintech, AI tends to play a critical part in helping us manage risk and deal with problems like fraud. It also helps us with offering personalized banking services, credit risk assessment, as well as wealth and portfolio management. We'll find out that those institutions that tend to infuse AI into the management of their portfolios tend to do much, much better than those that follow the traditional approach of choosing what to invest in. Algorithmic trading is something that hasn't really gained as much acceptance in our market because of the depth of the market. The NGX is not as deep, so a lot of firms haven't yet invested as much in algorithmic trading. This is just typically where the systems are making buy-sell decisions in very short periods of time, probably every second. Larger markets find it easier to do this, but the NGX is working very hard to ensure that the market is deepened, to encourage investors to make this a thing that will happen. And with the introduction of derivatives, we can see that more than likely, over the next 2 years perhaps, algorithmic trading is something that would really come to stay. In terms of the banking and customer experience, we find out that sometimes we have challenges with our institutions, and getting options can be a bit of a challenge. Sometimes they keep you on hold for extended periods of time. So this is one area where we can infuse AI using chatbots and answer services to self-guide a customer to resolve some of their issues. And where there is a need for a human operator, the chatbots can then hand over for the human in the loop to finish out the process if it's something that cannot be resolved without that individual. Credit score is also something that is coming up with some of the bureaus that have been set up within the financial services, within the financial system. But over time, we expect that as more and more data is gathered about people's buying, spending habits, and the loans, but more especially the loans that they take, because this information is shared securely between the banks and other fintechs that the CBN grants access to. AI can be run over that data to determine the risk of a default. And this would help in the lending decisions that the banks and financial institutions make. AI in wealth and portfolio management, we talked about that. And one of the major advantages would be reducing the fees and making it more approachable or accessible to the investing public. Because when you take a cross-section of the Nigerian population, we see that those who actually participate in things like this, compared to the population as a whole, that ratio is rather small. And one of the things that discourages them is the fees. So they look for alternative methods of investments that are outside the sector. And that's one of the reasons why the market is not even that deep anyway, when you consider the number of companies that are registered in Nigeria and you consider the population that Nigeria has. So if we're able to increase the efficiency with which assets as well as stockbroking, the net effect is that more people will get drawn in because of the reduction of fees, because of the reduction in the cost of doing business, and then there's a ripple effect. One of the things that was mentioned earlier on was the network effect, where as the market grows larger, there are ultimately more benefits that spread around to those who are participating in it. So some of the benefits of AI in finance, faster, more accurate decision making. I'm sure we'll see a pattern repeating here. Ultimately, it boils down to cost reduction, speed of doing business, better risk management and compliance, and ultimately the improved customer experience. It tends to be a repeating pattern across all industries. But how exactly that is manifest is what may vary depending on the industry that you're operating in. Agriculture is also an area that is getting interest when it comes to AI. Global food demand is increasing. AI helps farmers optimize resources. There are a number of challenges relating to flooding, drought, and some of the other environmental factors that are affecting food security in various parts of the world. One of the things that a number of institutions around the world are looking to do is to use AI to predict weather patterns and determine the most viable crops to rear or to grow at that point in time. So from year to year, this may vary depending on the predicted weather patterns or the state of the soil at that point in time. But being able to use the various aspects of AI and machine learning would help to better manage the resources that are available and ultimately increase yield. Being able to precisely predict the yield and plan your setup or your operations accordingly would ensure that you maximize return. These are the examples of some institutions that have been investing heavily in AI in Agric. The Azure FarmBit, this is something, a service from Microsoft that provides a suite of services and models that put into your existing systems. So if a farm is equipped with IoT devices, they have a central management system for recording all the activities on the farm, along with information coming from weather and other sources. Azure FarmBits can help you put all that information together and drive the decision making when it comes to running farm. And there seems to be an increasing interest in a lot of, by number of residents in Lagos, I have noticed. We see individuals on the outskirts of Lagos, Ogun, Ibadan, and places like that who are acquiring land or renting land to farm for a certain period of time and then possibility of renewing. So crops like yam, corn, cassava, things like that, and even vegetables. These are things that potentially, whether on a small scale or a large scale, is it possible to build up some kind of business around that? If one is looking to invest, one may have been holding back because of the potential risks. But with AI in the loop, can we use it to determine what exactly the risks are on a year-on-year basis? And that may probably help us not shy away as much from engaging in those activities. AI is also featuring more and more in energy. The oil and gas industry specifically, it tends to be a very really regulated industry. So there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of compliance, filings, reports, and things like that. Robotic process automation is one of the things that can greatly enhance those processes and reduce the drudgery in terms of putting those documents together, getting them submitted, digitizing them, and allowing it to drive our operations. Integrating AI into the various IoT sensors that helps us understand the state of the infrastructure at every point in time can also help better manage those facilities. The usual suspects, we enhance safety, we reduce cost, we increase sustainability and compliance, and then our real-time decision making is ultimately enhanced. These are just some examples of pioneers who are applying AI in their business: Chevron, ExxonMobil, BP, and Shell. As go through their digital transformation and adopt AI, there are fears that there will be breaches, that there are security risks, and then how do we mitigate all of that? Even without adopting AI in our day-to-day businesses, we experience a lot of threats on a day-to-day basis because we have bad actors who seem to be increasing by the day, whose determination is to just take down certain businesses or advance their own selfish interests. How do you stay ahead of the curve and ensure that we are not completely overrun by these bad actors? That's where having AI as a co-pilot in security comes in. It helps us with detecting these threats, dealing with them, mitigating them, and ultimately recovering and putting the business back on track. So AI in IT security is also one of the things that we'll be recommending that firms look at today, because it helps us with threat detection and prevention, preventing fraud. It helps us manage identity and access management, and it offers us predict threat intelligence. Oftentimes, the damage that occurs from not taking security very is more than the seeming savings we will get from not investing adequately in our IT security infrastructure. Some of the things that we're putting up here are Microsoft Fabric has real-time intelligence built into it. So we could use Fabric. Fabric will be discussed later in a subsequent talk, but it's one of the products from Microsoft that helps us harmonize and tame all this data that is being generated from different sources across the industry. And then Microsoft Defender is our companion. Some of us would have noticed that it's there on our Windows laptops, but it doesn't just operate on our Windows laptops, it also operates in the cloud, on our servers, and its job is to help us protect our IT assets from these bad actors. These are just some trends in AI for IT security. Now, we've run through quite a bit of material. And like I said, we'll probably have more questions than answers. But the aim is to help us think about all the possible areas where IT can be applied. Nothing is off the table. So whether it comes from personal productivity, various processes within our firms, irrespective of our industry, AI ultimately can play a part in helping us enhance operational efficiency. But we mentioned that it ultimately starts with the individual before you go to the team and then the firm or the industry. And so part of the call to action here is that we should try and pay attention to Microsoft 365 Copilot. One of the things that we can do first and foremost is to review those departments that have the highest usage of these office tools, and even Power BI. And then target those ones for Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses. By the way, there's also a free version, but it doesn't connect that with your enterprise. It just functions kind of like ChatGPT. But the one that requires a license allows you to operate across all these units, and these are just some examples of things that they can do on an individual basis.